One of the deepest enigmas kept by the Catholic Church once again awakens curiosity and fascination. Amid the signs emerging around us, many speculate that the year 2025 could finally unveil what has been kept secret for so long: the full content of the third prophecy of Fatima. But are we ready to understand this message? The story dates back to 1917, when three children, Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco, living in the small village of Fatima in Portugal, claimed to have been visited by a celestial figure who entrusted them with enigmatic messages. These messages, which were only interpreted over time, became known as the three prophecies of Fatima. The first two, associated with the end of the First World War and the expansion of communism in Russia, seem to have already been fulfilled, being linked to global events of great repercussion. However, it is the third prophecy that causes the most concern. Kept by the Vatican under strict secrecy for decades, this revelation awakens feelings ranging from fascination to fear among the faithful, hovering like a shadow in the Catholic imagination. What makes this prophecy so intriguing is not only the mystery of its content, but also the Church's decision to preserve it as a secret. Only a small fraction was released in 2000, and what was revealed seems like a glimpse of something much larger. According to the official account, the vision describes a bishop dressed in white, who many interpret as being the Pope himself, walking through a desolate city, a scene of destruction and scattered bodies, until he himself is killed. This brief report, although impactful, raises more questions than answers. Is this vision just a symbol, or does it carry a warning of an even greater tragedy? For scholars and theologians, the full content of the prophecy may include predictions of a profound spiritual crisis, or even a disaster of global proportions. It is believed that its concealment may be related to grim warnings, and some even think that the Vatican withheld parts of this content to avoid widespread panic. With the imminent arrival of 2025, anxiety is growing. The mystery of the third prophecy is not just a historical curiosity, but a call that challenges us to reflect on the present and the future. Could this be the last invitation to spiritual renewal, a final chance for transformation before the unknown reveals itself? The apparitions in the small town of Fatima in 1917 profoundly changed the direction of Catholic spirituality in the 20th century. Amid the silent fields of Portugal, three children, Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco, witnessed visions that transcended their understanding. The celestial presence they claimed to have seen gave them unsettling messages and, at the same time, an urgent call to conversion, prayer, and penance. The children's report spread quickly, and news of their visions crossed borders, attracting attention among both believers and skeptics. The first of these prophecies, serious and direct, warned about the imminent end of the First World War, but it also brought a second warning. Without repentance and change of course, humanity would face a new and even more terrible war. This warning seemed almost surreal, but 2 decades later, the world was once again devastated by World War II, an event that many came to regard as grim confirmation of Fatima's words. For those who believed in the visions, the children's messages were not just childish imaginations, but true warnings from destiny. The second prophecy, in turn, was centered on Russia, a country that would undergo an ideological revolution that would bring devastating consequences. In 1917, communism established itself in Russia, and over the following decades, this ideology spread, culminating in religious persecution and oppression. This atheistic regime brought with it the destruction of churches and a fierce crackdown on faith, events that frighteningly align with the warnings of the second prophecy. Looking back on these events, many Catholics came to see the children's words as divine confirmations that something greater had indeed been revealed. The conclusion that the first two prophecies came true cast an unsettling shadow over the third, still shrouded in mystery. Why would the third prophecy be different if the other two had already come true? For those who study the messages of Fatima, this last vision contains the omen of an even deeper and more definitive crisis. Its nature remains a secret, but for many, the possibility that it too will come true seems frighteningly real. The mystery surrounding the third prophecy grows, and with it, the feeling that time to understand and act on this warning may be running out. Each historical event seems to give the messages of Fatima even greater weight as humanity approaches a turning point. While the world waited for more complete answers, the Vatican made an unexpected decision: to keep the third prophecy of Fatima secret, creating an atmosphere of mystery and unrest that persists to this day. This silence turned what could have been a simple warning into one of the greatest mysteries of modern faith, stimulating theories and interpretations ranging from spiritual explanations to apocalyptic predictions. The question remains: why would a vision received by 3 children in an isolated village be considered so disturbing that it was kept secret for so long? In 1944, Sister Lucia, the last survivor of the 3 seers of Fatima, handed over the contents of the third prophecy to the Vatican. For decades, only a select group of popes and cardinals had access to the complete document. The expectation that the prophecy would be revealed to the public increased, especially after Sister Lucia herself suggested that the year 1960 would be the appropriate time for its disclosure. However, when 1960 arrived, the Church declared that it preferred not to reveal the message, justifying that the world was not ready to understand its content. It was only in 2000, during the pontificate of John Paul II, that a partial version of the third prophecy was finally released. According to the official explanation, the vision described a bishop dressed in white, interpreted as a reference to the Pope, walking through a destroyed city until he is killed amid rubble and bodies. The Church interpreted this vision as an allusion to the attack on Pope John Paul II in 1981, an event of great impact, but which for many seemed insufficient to justify decades of secrecy and mystery. The Vatican's silence surrounding the full content of the prophecy has fueled speculation. Some believe the text may contain warnings of an unprecedented spiritual crisis or even predictions of a global catastrophic event. For others, the prophecy could suggest a profound and painful transformation within the Church itself, which would involve changes to its fundamental structures and beliefs. More daring theologians venture to say that the omitted message points to an apocalyptic scenario, an event that would shake the very foundations of the Christian faith. Thus, the Church's silence on the full content of the third prophecy continues to hang like a shadow over humanity. The year 2025, which many see as an imminent milestone, is fast approaching, and the question remains: had the Vatican deliberately withheld a warning that would prepare us for something much greater? As the year 2025 approaches, a silent restlessness seems to take over those who closely follow the messages of Fatima. The first 2 prophecies, fulfilled in an almost premonitory way, made the world question with greater urgency the true meaning and importance of the third. Now the eyes of many turn to the signs around us in a desperate attempt to decipher whether the prophesied destiny really is at our doorstep. Could we be experiencing the foreshadowings of the final prophecy? Around the globe, disturbing events have been multiplying with an intensity that does not go unnoticed. Natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, fires, and droughts occur with increasing frequency and severity, giving the impression that the planet itself is rebelling against humanity's excesses and abuses. These phenomena, for many, are not just part of natural cycles, but a warning. Climate change, interpreted by some as the reflection of an imbalanced humanity, is seen as the prelude to an announced tragedy. And while the physical world oscillates, society also seems on the verge of rupture, marked by a profound crisis of values and a moral emptying that threatens to corrode the social fabric. But it is not just physical disasters that arouse attention and apprehension. Political and social tensions continue to grow like a spark in a dry field, ready to ignite a fire of global proportions. Rivalries between great powers take on an increasingly belligerent character, with economic, technological, and military disputes that fuel an environment of distrust and fear. This scenario of polarization and hostility clearly echoes Fatima's warning. Without repentance and unity, humanity would be doomed to a dark and perhaps irreversible destiny. For those who study the Fatima prophecies, each of these events seems to reinforce the idea that the full content of the third prophecy may be unfolding right before our eyes in an almost inevitable sequence. The year 2025, which appears as a milestone awaited with hope and fear, is seen by many as the moment when the veil over the third prophecy will finally be lifted, bringing to light the complete message that has been so preserved. The question remains unanswered, but signs all around seem to announce that time to understand and act is running out, leaving only one last chance for humanity to change its course. In a world that seems increasingly removed from faith, the message of Fatima resonates like a persistent echo of a long-forgotten call. Since the apparitions, the Virgin Mary has urged the faithful to conversion and prayer, warning about the dangers of a spiritual distance that, according to prophecy, would bring dark consequences for all humanity. This appeal, although expressed in simple words, contained a depth that many are only now beginning to understand. Spiritual decline manifests itself visibly in virtually every corner of the globe. Churches that were once full now find themselves empty, while the incessant search for material success and individualism gain prominence, supplanting the desire for inner peace and purpose in life. For many, the meaning of life has been replaced by tangible goals and temporary pleasures, while essential values are set aside. The Virgin Mary, in her messages, emphasized that conversion was not just an act of personal faith, but an urgent necessity to ensure a harmonious future. This return to faith would be, according to Fatima's vision, a spiritual shield against imminent calamities, a protection for both the individual and the collective. Today, in an era marked by existential crises, violent conflicts, and a growing sense of disillusionment, the message of Fatima becomes more urgent than ever. Many believe that the third prophecy contains a final warning, a decisive call for humanity to rediscover the path of spirituality and find in this return the peace and balance that so often elude it. The essence of the appeal is clear. Without a renewed spiritual commitment, the world may plunge deeper into a crisis that transcends material boundaries and reaches the core of the human soul. The loss of faith is seen not only as an abandonment of beliefs, but as a departure from the very essence of humanity. Without a spiritual anchor, societies become more vulnerable to problems such as violence, corruption, and despair. Indifference towards faith has profound consequences. A void that was previously filled by spirituality turns into loneliness and anguish. But the question remains, would humanity be willing to listen to this call, to consider the importance of an inner transformation before time runs out? The call to conversion remains as a last hope, an invitation to reflection and the recovery of the spiritual values that one day guided life in society. At the heart of the third prophecy of Fatima, an enigmatic image stands out, the figure of a bishop dressed in white, advancing slowly through a devastated city, surrounded by destruction and death. Although the Vatican interpreted this vision as an allusion to the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981, many scholars consider this explanation unsatisfactory. The vision describes not just an isolated attack, but a scenario of total ruin, a collapse that seems to transcend the individual experience of a single religious leader. For those who reflect on the meaning of this image, the figure of the bishop in white is seen as a powerful symbol, perhaps representing something much broader. For some scholars and believers, the bishop dressed in white represents the Catholic Church itself, an institution that for centuries has played a central role in the spiritual lives of millions of people around the world. However, amid the transformations of modern society, the Church today faces internal and external crises that threaten its unity, authority, and even its relevance. Abuse scandals, internal divisions, and increasing secularization in many parts of the world have weakened its influence, leaving the institution vulnerable and exposed at a time of global uncertainty. Those who interpret the prophecy of Fatima with a more critical eye see the bishop in white not just as a specific figure, but as a warning sign for the future of the Church. This vision raises an even more disturbing question. If the Church, which for so long carried the message of Fatima and guided the faithful, cannot remain strong, how can it lead humanity in the turbulence that the prophecy suggests? The third prophecy for many is a reminder that the Church itself needs renewal, a purification that can be painful, but essential so that it is prepared to face the challenges to come. This process of transformation would not only be a response to the crisis, but a requirement for the Church to continue its spiritual mission in a world that seems increasingly helpless. As 2025 approaches, the figure of the bishop dressed in white remains a source of disquiet and reflection. Does this figure symbolize the sacrifice necessary for the Church to renew itself? Or would it be an anticipation of an even greater crisis, which would shake the foundations of faith? For many, the image evokes both an omen of tribulation and a hope of rebirth, a duality that challenges the Church to ask itself, is it ready to face the purification that the prophecy of Fatima seems to suggest? Despite the alarming tone that surrounds the third prophecy of Fatima, the final message is not one of despair, but of hope and redemption. Although the visions carry disturbing images and dark portents, they also carry a powerful call to conversion and a firm promise that light will triumph over darkness as long as humanity chooses the path of faith. This is not just a warning, but an invitation to spiritual transformation that can, for many, change the course of their lives and, collectively, the course of history. Our Lady was clear in her request, praying the rosary daily, seeking peace through prayer and repentance. These practices would not only be methods of connecting with the divine, but ways of protecting humanity from future trials. For her, conversion was an urgent choice, necessary for the world to avoid a dark fate. This call is not just individual, but a collective call for people together to return to the spiritual values that maintain the essence of humanity. In a time of so much uncertainty, many see this request as the last opportunity for humanity to avoid an even greater tragedy. The promise of redemption contained in the message of Fatima represents something beyond comfort. She is a comforting reminder that even in the face of the greatest adversity, there is always a way back. The vision of the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary symbolizes the guarantee that at the end of it all, faith and goodwill prevail over chaos and darkness, offering an anchor of hope for the difficult times that may yet arise. This promise is like a light that guides the faithful, inspiring them to resist, persevere, and trust. As the world approaches 2025, the message of Fatima seems to take on new urgency. The expectation that humanity can still choose to change its destiny is the central point of the prophecy. She reminds us that, despite the shadows, the power of prayer, compassion, and conversion can still change the course of events. But ultimately, the decision is up to each individual, each community, and collectively, humanity as a whole. The essence of this choice is clear. It is a journey of reconciliation and love, where everyone has the power to contribute to a brighter future. At the heart of the Fatima prophecies lies a silent but immense responsibility placed upon the Catholic Church. For millions of believers, the Church represents not just a religious institution, but a safe haven in times of uncertainty, a spiritual guide capable of lighting the way in the face of dark omens. However, as the world faces crises of unprecedented proportions, the Church is also going through a moment of reflection and challenges of its own, testing its strength and leadership capacity. During the last century, the Church positioned itself as the guardian of the messages of Fatima, reinforcing the importance of prayer, penance, and conversion as means of spiritual transformation and salvation. This stance transformed the Church into a symbol of hope and a moral reference for those seeking answers. However, internal crises, including scandals and divisions, have deeply shaken the confidence of many believers, and this has left the institution vulnerable. The question inevitably arises, is the Church prepared to lead and guide the world at such a critical moment? Some theologians and scholars see the third prophecy of Fatima as a warning about an imminent internal crisis, something that requires purification and renewal within the ecclesiastical structure itself. For these interpreters, purification would be a painful process, but essential for the Church to emerge strengthened and prepared for the crucial role expected of it. The figure of the bishop dressed in white, described in the prophetic vision, could symbolize both the sacrifice and resilience required of the Church so that it becomes a true beacon for humanity, especially in times of adversity. As we approach the year 2025, the expectation that the Church will assume an active role of spiritual leadership becomes increasingly urgent. The Fatima prophecy ultimately represents a call for the Church to be ready, not only to reveal the full content of the messages, but to guide humanity with courage, wisdom, and clarity. At a time when the world seems increasingly in need of spiritual direction, the role of the Church is fundamental. The future, as always, remains uncertain, but the call to action and spiritual awakening has never been more pressing. For many believers, the question remains, will the Church be able to overcome its own tribulations to fulfill its spiritual mission at this decisive moment? The answer to this question not only involves the institution, but the faith and commitment of each of its members, united in prayer and spiritual renewal to face the challenges that lie ahead. Regardless of how the future unfolds, the message of Fatima makes clear that true preparation is not physical, but spiritual. The third prophecy, filled with disturbing images and sobering warnings, reminds us that throughout history, faith has been the anchor that sustains humanity in the midst of the fiercest storms. Our Lady offered more than a terrifying vision. She offered a route to hope and protection through prayer, compassion, and the pursuit of a life of purpose, where spirituality is the fundamental foundation. As 2025 approaches, many question whether there will truly be a definitive manifestation of the prophecy. Yet for those who understand Fatima's call, next year is less a set date and more a symbolic milestone, an opportunity for spiritual reassessment and renewal. It's not about waiting for an external sign or a grand event, but an inner call to action. Prophecy is, first of all, an invitation to strengthen faith so that regardless of the adversities that may arise, each person is rooted in values that transcend fear and uncertainty. This call to preparation is not something that can be postponed or forgotten. It is an urgent call for each individual to reflect on their own life and choices, seeking meaning beyond immediate concerns and reconnecting with the divine. Our Lady did not ask for great sacrifices or grandiose gestures, but small acts of faith, love, and generosity that together have the power to transform not only each person's personal life, but also the collective destiny of humanity. Every positive action, no matter how small, becomes a concrete response to the call of Fatima. Fatima's message persists as a timeless reminder: true change begins in each person's heart. Whether 2025 brings extraordinary events or passes like any other year, what really matters is how each of us chooses to respond to the call to faith, hope, and love that prophecy offers. Spiritual transformation is not something that depends on a time frame. It is a continuous and daily process, a search for inner peace and harmony with others. Thus, the message of Fatima is more than a warning. It is an invitation to deep reflection and the recovery of values that bring a true purpose to life. Change, after all, is within everyone's reach, and each choice made in the name of faith and love brings humanity closer to a more enlightened and hopeful future.